All right, it looks like we are live on Facebook for today's community conversation around the humanitarian crisis in Afghanistan. I'm Ashley Gadiano, the Director of External Affairs at CIRI, and I'm here with Martine and Alicia. I'll let you two introduce yourselves quickly and then I'll get things started. So Martine?
Hi, so my name is Martine and I'm the Refugee Program Manager for the Refugee Services right here at CIRI.
Perfect. And Alicia?
Yep, I'm Alicia Kingsman. I am a staff attorney at CIRI.
Wonderful. So today, like we've done in the past, we're going to have just a 30-minute conversation on what we know about what's happening in Afghanistan, what CIRI is doing, both from a social services and a legal services perspective, and ways that you as an audience can provide support as well. This is being recorded and will be put up on CIRI's website later today or at the beginning of next week. And like always, we can take questions as we go. So if you're watching on Facebook and you use the comment feature, you can type in your questions and we are able to see those as we go through this conversation, and we'll do our best to answer them live. And if not, we will certainly get answers and get back to you after this broadcast is done. So with that, I want to just jump right in to what we're hearing. So I know we're not on the ground in Afghanistan, but both Alicia and Martine, you've spoken with a number of clients who have families still in Afghanistan. Let's start there so that people have perhaps a perspective that may or may not be different than what's on the news. Martine, you want to kick things off there with what you're hearing and who you're hearing from?
Sure. So we've been contacted by many of the refugees that we have resettled in the past. We've received information that was transmitted to them about how to stay safe or how their family members could stay safe in the meantime. And so we have met with them. They have been asking what they could do, how they could protect their family, or how they could bring their family to the States, and if there was any quicker way, I would say, to bring any family member, and how families would be affected if they were already in processing. Also, we've been working with some who are students who arrived here with H-1B visas, also with F1 visas, and so they are wondering what the process will look like as they are not willing to return back home, especially when it includes women and girls as well. And so we've been trying to get as much information as we could and provide them the information that we have without going into the legalities, since we really do not know on my end how to assist them with the immigration process at this time. And so I'm happy to pass the mic to Alicia.
Perfect. Yeah. Go ahead, Alicia.
Thanks, Martine. We've really been inundated with phone calls and messages and emails from so many individuals, those who have family in Afghanistan, but also those who have colleagues or just are so concerned about the situation. And I think we're all feeling really helpless and overwhelmed with the crisis that we're seeing unfold. I'm hearing from clients and their family members, some of whom have, in theory, a way to get out, but just cannot get to the airport or can't do so in a safe way. And others who currently don't have a mechanism that will allow them to leave, even if they could find a way to safely travel. And it's a really fluid situation. So, the advice that we are trying to give now, it changes by the hour, may change, is certain to change as the days go by, and certainly as we approach the deadline of the agreement with the Taliban.
And that deadline you're referencing is the August 31st deadline, correct? Yeah, I think it's important to note for those listening, whether you're just a concerned community member or whether you're coming to this today or later for advice or recommendations about what to do is that this is evolving. What we heard at the beginning of the week is vastly different than the instructions we are receiving now. Now we have State Department email addresses we can share. We didn't have that last Monday. And what we dive into in terms of legal knowledge and suggestions at this point is also going to be different than perhaps where we're at next week. So, keep that in mind. If you're watching this recorded later than today, by the time you watch this, we might be different and at a different place than right now. So with that said, I think let's start with kind of the legal side of things, and then we'll also talk with Martine about the social services piece. Alicia, I know that this is a huge conversation, and let's try and distill it down as best as we can. But can you talk a little bit about kind of the legal situation as it stands right now, and then perhaps options for those who remain in Afghanistan versus those who are in the United States?
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, Ashley, this is an evolving situation. It's also a really sensitive one. And so, we are not giving legal advice. There's no way for us to assess the specific options for any individual. So just keep that in mind. That being said, we are, as I mentioned before, we are really feeling in many ways helpless and overwhelmed. But at the same time, we're trying to focus on what we can do. And there do exist some options that may be available to individuals. This is a fluid situation. It's changing day by day, but this is sort of what we know now. And it really comes down to those two distinct but related situations that you mentioned. Those individuals from Afghanistan who are here in the United States already, and those who are still outside of the United States in Afghanistan, or perhaps in a neighboring country, some third country, where they're attempting to find a way here. And certainly that second situation is the most pressing issue, right, is paramount here. So for those here in the United States already, we are sort of waiting to see what's going to happen. There is currently no TPS designation for Afghanistan. That's temporary protected status.
Thanks.
It's a tool that is used by the government in collaboration with the State Department to ensure that nationals of certain countries that are undergoing some serious natural disaster or civil unrest or other crisis can have temporary protection from deportation and temporary lawful status here in the United States. So certainly it seems like Afghanistan would be, the fit for a designation like TPS, but as of yet, that hasn't happened. While we wait for something like that or some other type of parole program, which the Department of Homeland Security has the ability and power to do, there may be other options available on a case-by-case basis. For example, individuals who are here already may be eligible for asylum. Now, typically, individuals would have to ask for asylum within their first year of entry into the U.S., and there may be individuals, nationals of Afghanistan, who've been here for longer than a year. That's still likely going to be okay because there's an exception to the 1-year filing deadline for changed circumstances. And certainly what we're seeing in Afghanistan now are drastically changing circumstances. And so asylum might be an option. There also is other administrative tools, for example, deferred action. You may have heard that term before in conjunction with the childhood arrivals, DACA, which is a form of deferred action. But deferred action is a tool in and of itself to defer enforcement action against individuals or groups of individuals who deserve some sort of protected humanitarian status here in the US. And so that may be another option for certain individuals who are currently here. Now, those who are in Afghanistan or a third country or attempting to get into a third country, certainly that's the paramount issue here and the most challenging.
Right.
Those individuals, there are sort of two groups, I think. One are those who already have some sort of permission to get to the United States or are at the end or very near to the end of that process, right? So those would be individuals who may already have an immigrant visa approved or were in the last stages of their immigrant visa because of a family-based immigration case, for example, spouses, parents, children of US citizens, spouses of green card holders, to name a few, as well as individuals who may have already been granted their SIV, special immigrant visa, or individuals who are nearing the end of that process. The State Department of Defense have indicated that they're prioritizing those groups for evacuation or repatriation. Also in that first group would be US citizens and green card holders who currently are in Afghanistan and looking to be repatriated. Those individuals, they have that kind of first hurdle, somewhat surmounted because there's a mechanism in place to try to get them here, but they're encountering this other significant hurdle, which is safely making it to the airport, safely boarding a plane, and actually departing.
And Alicia, can I just ask you a question about that real quick for people who are listening, which is to go through that process to get, a visa or green card or whatever that looks like, how long are you talking? Like, you're not talking people being able to suddenly see an emergency happening and file for that. That's a long process. So these people have been waiting for a long time.
Yeah, those processes would likely have had to have been in process for months and months and months, and in many cases, years, if we're talking about some of those immigrant visa processes. Siblings of US citizens, those cases take over 12 years. So
right.
Yeah, that's
I just want that perspective. Like, this isn't something that people just could do 2 weeks ago when we started to hear about the crisis. This has been ongoing and likely happened well in advance of any sort of fall of Afghanistan. So
right, they were lucky enough to have something in process already, from maybe years ago. Yeah.
Right. Okay, continue. Apologies for the interruption.
No, please. And so yeah, they may have that opportunity to try to depart. The embassy may even be in communication with them, directing them to go to the airport and present themselves to be able to be evacuated. But they are encountering, Taliban checkpoints, violence occurring in front of them, deaths occurring in front of them. And even for those who have been able to safely make it to the airport, waiting in line for hours, literal days, and not knowing if they're ever going to be able to get through because of the kind of starting and stopping of flights, the lack of security at the airport, on the tarmac, et cetera.
Right, and I think those are some of the images that you are seeing right now, are people waiting to get on a plane or hope that they get through.
Exactly. Many of whom are US citizens, right? Or green card holders. And so that's sort of the first group of individuals. And the second would be, those who don't currently have an option, a mechanism that's going to allow them to be a priority for evacuation or even attempt to leave and try to get to the United States. So, those are individuals who, don't currently have an SIV in process, who aren't currently part of a refugee case, who don't currently have an immigrant visa petition pending or filed. And that's probably the majority of the individuals who need to get out. And so for those individuals, while there may be some options, none of them, as of right now, are happening quickly. And even for those that may be able to go through quickly, like, for example, a Department of Defense parole, which I'll talk about in a second, they're still going to encounter this issue of getting to the airport safely. And as time goes by, I don't see that getting better. And so for those individuals, we are in some way playing travel agent and trying to figure out where else they can go to, right? Where else they may be able to travel to, what third country might allow them to come in on an e-visa or no visa, or a visa upon arrival so that they can at least try to exit. And then once in a third country, look for whatever options might be available. Those options may be something like a P2, right? So the new refugee designation for Afghan nationals who have worked for, contracted with the U.S. government or a U.S. NGO that was operating in Afghanistan, or a media organization that may eventually allow them to come to the U.S. to be admitted as refugees. But as we all know, that process is not a quick one.
And that's a designation that just came online 2 weeks ago, maybe?
2 weeks ago, yeah.
Right. So that's new as well.
And so P2 and also SIV, right? If we're talking about a special immigrant visa of that type, those require initiation. Those programs need to be initiated at least in part by or through referral through someone else, right? It's not like someone can self-identify and say, I'm a P2, apply for a P2 directly, or I'm an SIV, I need to apply for an SIV. It's a really complicated process that requires direct referral, if we're talking about, to the refugee admissions program, or that's going to require specific documentation from the U.S. the U.S. government entity that you are working for, et cetera. And that requires documentation, scanning and uploading documents, and all of that is complicated in general, even more so in a situation like what we're seeing. And so, yeah, for many of our clients and our clients' family members and their loved ones and their colleagues and the callers that we're talking to, the priority is where can they go? And that's complicated. There are some countries that are that give e-visas to the Afghan nationals. There may be some Afghan nationals who have already applied for a visa for some other purpose, like a tourist visa or a student visa to another country, that may be able to utilize that if they can get out. And even if SIV or P2 isn't a possibility, which for many individuals it won't be because of those strict requirements, there still may be other options like humanitarian parole, like Department of Defense parole, or a new family-based petition or something similar, but it's likely going to require processing in a third country. So getting out is the priority.
Is the key. So let me just pause you there. Martina, is this what you feel like you're hearing, these concerns, these same stories from, I know you've spoken with dozens of people, so is this what you're hearing?
Yeah, this is mostly really what we are hearing. It's the concern for the families who are in Kabul, or even those who are in Afghanistan and outside of Afghanistan. We have a lot of families of our Afghanese refugees who are currently in Turkey. Also, and are asking, if somebody leaves Afghanistan right now, first of all, will they be accepted going into a different country? Pakistan is really a country that they have talked very often about going to, and and asking about, will Pakistan first of all accept them? And second of all, how long will the process be once they are in in Pakistan? Is there a way that it will happen faster, or are we still talking about placing families there for a year, 2 years, 3 years, or more? And so what are the risks and what is to be gained by leaving the country? So we are hearing reports that, of the dangers that are happening right now inside Kabul, definitely, and how it is impossible to reach the airport in some ways, plus no guarantees of leaving. And so they are asking us, how the process will move along for anybody who is not applying in anything or hadn't applied for anything until today, and how we can help them get out or direct them in where they could go, and I've a lot of questions about, of course, the embassies. First of all, the embassies, the American embassies are going to be packed in all of the countries that are surrounded. But what are there any guarantees that they would be able to come to the United States? And then to follow that, I get a lot of questions are, will they be able to come directly here to Connecticut as well, since they have families here? And as you know, Connecticut is on the list of the 10th state that received most of the refugees from Afghanistan. And if we look at the per capita with residents for Connecticut, we are the second largest state to accept Afghans here. So there is definitely a demand and the ability for us also to receive them, the willingness for us to receive them. And, you know, it is just really about finding a way of how to best serve them while they are not yet in the country.
Right, right. And when the people we're hearing from are the family, and there's only so much that we can do. So I want to go into kind of what services people have access to if they get here, but let me wrap up with Alicia. That's a lot of information. And I guess what I feel like is important for people to take away is twofold. One, if you are an Afghani who is here in the country or a family member, what is it you would tell them to do, right? Like, what is the step now? And then if you are in the United States and, you know, have legal matters that need to be dealt with, what would you tell those people to do?
Yeah, so it is a lot of information, and because it is evolving, I think, you know, what we've said a couple of times now is really important to like stay tuned as these things change. I think two really important takeaways are, you know, get good legal advice and be in touch with your congressional representatives. I say that because, you know, there do exist options that can get people here. Now, is it as quick and as efficient as we would want it to be? No, but we should be pursuing any viable option. Something like humanitarian parole can be requested for anyone. They don't need to have a family member here. They don't need to meet the specific requirements in the P2 refugee program or as an SIV. Any individual can request the humanitarian parole of any other individual. Now, it's not just like that, and there's paperwork and a financial responsibility piece to it, but there are tools available to try to do what we can to get individuals safely to the United States. And that would include leveraging the liaison power, the communication ability of our congressional representatives, because we can't talk directly to Congress, to the Department of Defense, to these task forces. It's our congressional representatives who have that communication power. And there, as I mentioned before, there are tools that exist that could parole large numbers of people into the United States, or not large numbers, right? Department of Defense can request the parole of any individual for any important reason. And so that could include activists and teachers and others. But, you know,
Alicia, what does it mean to request the parole of an individual? What does that actually look like for somebody?
A parole is a temporary is a permission to enter the United States. And so the Department of Defense can request that an individual or a plane load of individuals be paroled into the United States, to be given permission to enter the United States in a lawful way. And so, you know, it is similar to humanitarian parole, but humanitarian parole is a request that an individual would make of the Department of Homeland Security. Department of Defense parole comes from the Department of Defense. And so because it's government, one branch, you know, one entity, one governmental entity, another one, it can happen more quickly. And
they've done that before en masse, right? It's doable.
It's absolutely doable. And so, you know, working with congressional representatives to really make sure that all options are being examined and that we are pushing the State Department, we're pushing Department of Defense, we're pushing all entities in our government to do whatever they can to make sure people can safely exit. And that would include, pushing forward family-based cases and humanitarian parole for family members and things like that. So it's really those two pieces, get some good legal advice and push your congressional representatives.
Great. And as we continue, I'm going to put up the phone numbers for series offices. We have Bridgeport, Stamford, Hartford, and Waterbury legal offices. So I'll put those phone numbers up for people who do have questions. You're welcome to call and set up consults. And then I'll also put up the numbers for our congressional delegation. We have been in contact with our congressional delegation. They're getting information as well throughout this, but have been responsive. And I would urge people, like Alicia said, to reach out, whether you are in this situation yourself or whether you are, again, just a concerned community member who wants to make sure that these levers are being pulled to really support people in Afghanistan and families based here. With that said, let me flip gears away from the legal side of things, and Martine, come back to you. We've talked about the P2, Priority 2 refugee status. We've talked about special immigrant visa holders. Let's start with when people come here under either of those designations. What does that look like? Let's start with what does that look like, and then we can go into a little bit people coming into Connecticut, how they end up in Connecticut, etc.
So when they come here with P2, with SIV, they are able to receive the same services that refugees receive, basically. And so that would be case management as a number one, but housing assistance, orientation, cultural orientation, employment assistance, ESL, English as a second language enrollment. They would be able to really tap into every services that any refugees receive. And having a case manager assigned to them that would guide them, direct them, and help them. It would also mean that they would be able to receive case managements for up to 5 years. So there is a lot of services right now that is available, various employment programs, various children programs. A lot of the Afghans have families, have young children. And so, they would receive the assistance in helping enrollment in schools, but also we at CIRI offer youth programmings as well. We offer women programmings also. We try to empower women through employment, but through understanding their resilience. We empower men by finding them jobs as well, and improve on their careers. We're here. We're that one-stop shop for any assistance, any call. That's what we do. We're here for that call of duty, and that's what we want to do. We are fully staffed, so we are all able to provide any assistance at any time. We've heard that, there is a 24 hours turnaround for any Afghans that would be coming mostly through Virginia and then be processed to come to Connecticut. And so we have been asked, are you ready if that happens? And absolutely, we are. We are fully ready. We've contacted hotels, we've contacted Airbnbs in case we are not able to find housing in 24 hours, but that way we are able to place them and locate them in safe housing until we are able to locate a more final residence for them.
More permanent. And I think one of the beautiful things about CIRI is, we are a one-stop shop, meaning we have incredible case managers on your team, employment specialists, youth specialists, but we also have a really robust legal services department, which means that we have the ability to look at and approach a case and help support a family from so many different angles and potential, kind of pain points. And that's really special. You don't see that everywhere. How does somebody, I know you said most of these individuals are going through Virginia. We've also heard California. How then are they, or would they end up in Connecticut? Because this is looking different than what a typical refugee resettlement journey may look like. So talk a little bit about that difference, and then again, how from Virginia somebody would end up in Connecticut.
So most of them would be coming to the Army base that is in Virginia, and the name escapes me right now. And from there, they will be processed. We work under the umbrella of USCRI, as there are 7 other resettlement agencies that would assist with the processing. And from there, pending whether they have families in Connecticut, they could request to come to Connecticut. Or also they could be assigned by the different agencies during the processing time so that they are able to choose their final destination. Now, the first arrival that came about 2 weeks ago, that were 1,500 Afghans that arrived in one day, a majority of them went to California. So California has the largest community of Afghans in the United States. And so they were sent to San Diego, to California. They were sent some state in Virginia. And so some went to Texas. So they were placed immediately in communities that had larger communities and were already ready and set up to receive immediately. That being said, SIVs or even P3 are able to request where they want to be relocated once they arrive in the United States. And I'm going to let Alicia speak a little bit more to that.
Oh, I had muted myself, sorry. Yeah, I mean, I think that you pretty much covered it. You know, there may be some ability for refugees for preference to be given to areas where they have other family members or where there is a larger community. And like you said, Martine, Connecticut is, and you know, should be proud of the fact that we have resettled such a high number of really vulnerable and deserving refugees in our area, and are ready to fully staffed and ready to welcome more and ensure that they have the best possible start to their new beginning here in the United States.
Yeah, one of the questions that I got from some folks, including the media this past week, is how does CIRI or other agencies, but we'll talk about CIRI, prepare to receive people from Afghanistan versus, you know, potentially Congo or Central America? Does our team do anything different? How do we make sure we're prepared to address whatever trauma may exist based off of where somebody is coming from?
We're able to receive anybody. It really does not make a difference where they are coming from at all. There is a base of core services that will be provided to every refugee, every immigrant that comes in, as we also work with asylees, and we also work with some who are granted parole. Services will be identical. What changes is when we identify special needs that is required for one family or for specifics, then we can adjust our work to make sure that we are inclusive of what they are in need of. You know, and we do that for every cases anyway. I mean, we do have an intensive case management department that handle cases that require just a little bit more assistance or that are just a little bit more vulnerable. And that's part of the refugee services. So we are prepared. There is nothing to prepare us more or to be more prepared. I believe that we are fully prepared.
Wonderful. So I want to be respectful of everybody's time and wrap up in the next few minutes. One of the things we've talked a lot about is, you know, those levers that could be pressed with Congress and with our congressional delegation. Maybe Alicia, will jump to you. Can you lay out those 2 or 3 requests that we've talked about. Again, let's assume we're talking to people who are not directly impacted by this, but just somebody in the Connecticut community who wants to write to their representative or their senator and ask them to do A, B, and C. What would those handful of things be or look like?
Yeah, I would say that they should be asking, what if they can ensure that our voices are heard, and what is the Department of Defense, the Department of State, and the Department of Homeland Security going to do to ensure that those who need to get out can? And so, how and when and if they are going to be pursuing things like the Department of Defense parole that I've mentioned, or other parole programs, making sure that they are pursuing all of those options using the tools that they do have to ensure that large numbers of vulnerable individuals can get here as quickly as possible. And the reason why that's so important is because we're talking about extraordinary measures, right? There do exist these other measures that we've talked about, like humanitarian parole and immigrant visas and things like that. All of those require time, they require resources, they require access to an embassy in most cases to run biometrics and things like that. But the Department of Homeland Security, in conjunction with other government agencies, has the power and ability to do these things without all of that, right? They do have the ability to parole folks without the use of embassy, without running those biometrics. They can board people on a plane, process the parole en route, and then run biometrics when they get here to the US. They've done it before. They've done it with SIVs before. And so those tools exist, and I feel like our collective voices can be really well used to push them to tell us how and when they're going to use those tools.
And I think that that's really important to reiterate. You said they can do the biometrics, they will do the processing. It's not that that isn't going to happen. It's not that we are, for people who have concerns potentially around security, it's not that those steps are being skipped. It's that they're being done in a different location in order to ensure the safety of people in Afghanistan, correct?
Exactly.
Okay. So I always like to wrap these conversations with tangible actions that people can take. And that's one. My kind of other two, and then Martine, if you have anything to add, please do so. My other two are, first, if you know people who are in need of help, tell them to contact our office, right? If they're here or related to have some tie to Connecticut, please tell them to reach out, and we'll see whether there's something we can do, or, again, where we can perhaps refer their case, or, how we can get in touch with our congressional delegation. So that would be the first. Please, reach out to us if you have questions. And then the second is, these kind of crises, while we are prepared to take in cases and we're prepared to handle legal services, they are not part of our necessarily day-to-day operation. So the best thing people can do is really support their local resettlement or nonprofit immigration services agency. That includes SERI. There's others in Connecticut. There are others nationwide, but certainly supporting from a financial perspective so that we can make sure that we have the staff to handle the cases, who can reallocate their time to take this on, is really, really important. And finally, we will continue to update our website. We have a FAQ page we started on this. It has some information. We'll add to it as we get more information, but people can go to that and share that link as well. Martine, do you have anything to add to that? And then Alicia?
So I'm just going to add that I have been taking the names of family members who are in Afghanistan currently, or who are even outside of Afghanistan, with the purpose to send that to our state representative so that there could be help provided, or so at least that it can be talked about in the Congress, and that those names are already out there in case a plane could be filled with them
Right.
and brought here. So definitely, and definitely donations do help, monetary donations, as a lot of them will have to leave on a day's notice also, so they will not be able to fly with any luggages with them. They will really barely just wear what they have on their backs, and that's it. So we are not asking for donation of clothes at this point, but really donations of funds so that we can go with them and purchase clothing or other items as needed when they do come.
Great. And Alicia?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Martine, you and Ashley both really covered it. My kind of action items are, as I mentioned before, get good legal advice, support your local nonprofit organizations who are really doing this work at a local level here in our state and in our community, and talk to your congresspeople.
Great. So I would say thank you to everybody who listened. If you have questions and you're watching this after the fact, there is my email address on the screen. And like I said, this will be put up on our YouTube and our website in the next, hopefully, hour or two, and ready for circulation at that point. So thank you, Alicia and Martine. Thank you for all that you guys are doing and that your teams are doing. And stay tuned, because I would imagine we'll be back here in the next week or so with some updated information. All right. Have a great day. Happy Friday.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.